I'd like to inform those present that this meeting is being webcast live and will be capable of repeated viewing. Do any members wish to declare any interest in relation to any matters included on the agenda today? No declarations? Does Cabinet agree to retain the items listed in Part 2 of the agenda as confidential items as defined by the Local Government Act 1972, and as such to request members of the press and public and any members or officers who do not have a direct interest in the items to leave when these items are reached? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. Does Cabinet agree to the minutes of the previous meeting as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Councillor Miller.
I believe I'm listed as having been in attendance. I was actually recovering from an operation.
Oh, that's right, you weren't here. Great, thank you. That is noted and we will update them. I'll turn now to my chair's communications for today. I would like to start by acknowledging and recognising the terrible tragedy that took place in this city just a matter of days ago. Early yesterday morning, our emergency services discovered and recovered the bodies of 3 women off the coast of Brighton, just along by our marina. I want to pay tribute to the emergency services for a very swift, collaborative and professional response. I know that the police, the RNLI, the Coast Guard, our seafront team have been working exceptionally hard to try and identify these 3 women and to understand the circumstances of their deaths. I understand from the police today that the women have been identified and that their loved ones have been informed and are receiving support from specialist trained officers. It's an absolutely devastating thing to happen, and I know that I speak on behalf of the city when I say that we are deeply saddened and deeply distressed at this tragedy. And I want to send my very sincere condolences, heartfelt condolences to the loved ones of these women who will be receiving the news today. And I do that on behalf of everybody in Brighton and Hove. I also want to take a moment at the start of this meeting to recognise and express our collective horror at the terror attack that took place in Golders Green just a matter of weeks ago, the latest in anti-Semitic terror attacks that have taken place across London over the past several months. And obviously we saw last year in the autumn a similar terrorist attack at Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester. I know that these attacks have had a very real impact on Jewish people in this country, Jewish residents, including in this city. The whole point of terrorism is to invoke terror and fear in those that are being targeted, and that has happened. I know from speaking to Jewish residents in the city across many months and years that that fear is real and it is understandable. People feel concerned going about their day-to-day business, going into the centre of town, being and appearing visibly Jewish in the current climate of a rise in anti-Semitism. I want to once again send my message of solidarity to say that this City Council is doing everything that we can and should do to try and reassure our Jewish communities, whether that is removing offensive and racist graffiti, whether it is implementing anti-Semitic training for our staff and partners, and thinking about specific security concerns that the community has in the city. And that work continues and our solidarity continues. Since we last met 3 weeks ago, we've been continuing to put residents' priorities into action and to make progress. We released evidence just last week or the week, possibly the week before, about the impact of red routes in Lewis Road, where we have seen an improvement in air quality, a reduction in safety incidents, and also an increase in footfall since that red route was implemented. And today residents will have seen our announcement of a new red route planned for Western Road. We have started restoring our heritage lanterns on the seafront. The first 5 lanterns are being put back up along our promenade, and it was a pleasure to go down there, speak to the team, and to see all the brilliant hard work that has been done to restore these beautiful and unique Brighton assets. and we look forward to seeing more of those go up in the coming weeks. We've opened our paddling pools for the summer and reopened Victoria Park public toilets in Portslade. We've reopened Coldine Lane, which I know is a very popular walking route for residents. And from the 1st of May, the Renters' Rights Act has come into force, which is incredibly important and significant in this city where we know we have such a high number of renters. So from the beginning of this month, you cannot be evicted without a valid reason. Your tenancy will be periodic with no fixed end date. There'll be a maximum of 1 rent rise per year with 2 months' notice, and renters can challenge unfair rent rises in the tribunal. Landlords cannot discriminate based on benefits or having children, and you can request to keep a pet, and any refusal of that request must be reasonable. These are real, genuine, tangible increases in renters' rights thanks to our Labour government, and we're working hand in hand with them on implementation and making sure that renters in Brighton can have their rights upheld. We have also, in the last few weeks, appointed an independent chair of our inequality review, a woman named Polly Herbert, who has a huge amount of experience of the city, lived experience of the issues that this review is getting to grips with. And I had a really good meeting with Polly earlier this week. I think she's excellent. I think she's going to do some brilliant and much needed work in the city. Our children and our primary schools have been naming our waste food trucks, and we've got some brilliant names. West Blatchington children have named their food truck Food Waste Hunters. We've got Leftovers Express, thanks to Rudyard Kipling. We've got a Waste Warrior, thanks to Hertford Primary. But I must say that my absolute favourite is Freddie Mercury, and it's not down to the fact that that was the idea that emanated from Stanford Infants, which is my old school. But I think they look brilliant. The designs and the pictures look lovely as well. So thank you to our children for all their creativity and imagination. We've put forward our final design for the A259, including listening again to residents and ensuring that we're getting the details of that design right. And I thank everyone that contributed to that consultation. And earlier this week, the government has launched its next consultation on local government reorganisation. I'm really pleased to see that our proposals for expanding the footprint of this city and merging with areas to our east has been put forward as a proposal by the government, and I urge residents to take a look at the proposals, to think about the issues and to respond to the consultation. We've had a boost to the funding available for our school and hospital meals, and we will be driving towards more nutritious meals in the city, one of 5 places selected by the government for this pilot programme, which is really exciting. And just to let everybody know that I've got a leader surgery in Round Hill coming up next week. There are still places available if anyone wants to come and speak to me or to ask me anything. Turning to today's cabinet agenda, we are formally commencing work on the new city plan, or that's being proposed today. This is potentially a decisive step towards a plan for the city which supports housing delivery, sustainable growth, and the protection of our valued green spaces. We've secured over £100,000 in government funding linked to clear milestones, including getting to Gateway 1 by October. And this work will build on the very strong engagement that we saw last year, with more than 700 residents already having a say on our priorities, such as affordability and density, with further consultation to follow this summer if we decide to go ahead today. We are on track, meeting deadlines and unlocking funding for this work. We're also responding today clearly to residents' expectations on electric vehicle charging, with a report coming on that subject. People have told us that reliability and access matter the most, and the proposals before us set forward a path to move us from around 500 charge points that we currently have in the city to more than 6,000 by 2040, supported by levy funding, long-term contracts, ultra-rapid hubs, and cross-pavement solutions. I personally am particularly excited by the cross-pavement proposed trial for blue badge holders and taxis as a first step towards making electric charging more affordable for those households that don't have driveways in the city, because we know that we have many of them. On public transport, we're proposing an additional 1.5 million in this financial year to extend free bus travel for older and disabled residents beyond the statutory minimum. This is a clear statement of our commitment to fairness, access and independence, and we are seeking to manage financial and contractual risk carefully. On cleaner air, we have a report today that is all geared towards strengthening our smoke control areas to reduce harmful domestic pollution, protect health and support our climate objectives. And we also have a report today on our housing asset management plan about prioritising safety, bringing long-term voids back into use for temporary accommodation and taking strategic decisions where they will deliver better outcomes overall. We have a paper on housing safety and quality. Resident safety remains a non-negotiable priority for this administration. The progress update before us, I think, shows real momentum. Surveys commencing from July, accelerated action on damp and mould in line with AWAB's law, and regular resident forums to strengthen accountability and trust. This is about sustained improvement, not one-off fixes, and maintaining pace is what really matters here. We also have a late paper today on brickfields, and we'll come to that later on in the agenda. This is a council that knows what it's here to deliver, understands the national context that we're operating in, and is confident in its ability to act. And I commend today's agenda to the Cabinet as another step forward for a stronger, fairer and greener Brighton and Hove. I turn now to call over, and I propose that all of the items are reserved for discussion. Does the Cabinet agree? Agreed. Thank you, colleagues. So that brings us to public involvement, and we have one question today on our paper working towards cleaner air for Brighton and Hove through improved smoke control areas. I've got Rob Whittington on my list. Would you like to join us and read the question, please?
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Rob.
Given smoke control area legislation specifically permits the use of significantly lower emitting DEFRA exempt stoves and DEFRA authorised smokeless fuels, and given the differing public messages Brighton residents have received in recent years regarding solid fuel use, how does the council intend to ensure that residents are provided with the clear and balanced guidance they deserve? Not only about what will be prohibited under the expanded SCA rules, but importantly also about the entirely lawful and lower emission for fuel use that remain permitted.
Thanks, Rob. I'm going to ask Councillor Okins to respond.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks for coming with the question today. So our approach to this policy area has been and will remain data-led. We will be communicating clearly what is and is not permitted within a new smoke control area if it is approved today, and helping to ensure the residents know how to remain compliant. If we do approve this today, we'll obviously have several months to do some messaging ahead of it coming into effect for the winter season. We will, however, continue to raise awareness of the health impacts of fine particulate matter, and that there is, in essence, no such thing as clean burning. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Okins. We turn now to issues raised by members, and questions can be found published in the addendum. We've got 15 minutes set aside for member questions, and once we've reached time, I'll move to the next item and written responses will be sent for the remaining questions. We've received 17 member questions for this meeting, and I'll rotate through those members that are present in attendance and ask you to ask your first two questions first as the fairest way to manage them, and then if there's time, we can take additional questions again in rotation. I'm going to ask Councillor Maclay to come and ask your question first, please.
Thank you, Chair. While I can see that fire risk assessment remediation work is taking place, my understanding is that FRA findings are still not being shared with residents. Article 21A of the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005 requires that the risks identified in FRAs and the measures to address them are communicated to residents and updated when assessments change. Can you confirm Brighton and Hove City Council are now sharing FRA information with residents, and if not, why not?
Thank you very much for your question. Yes, I can confirm that. In line with our duties under Article 21A of the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005, the Council provides residents with fire safety information through annual letters to high-rise residents, fire action notices, building-specific communications, evacuation information, and updates when fire safety works are planned or underway. Further information is available on the Council's website, including high-rise building safety resident engagement strategy and fire safety in council flats pages. Thank you for your question. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. I'm going to ask Councillor Pickett to come and ask a question.
Thank you, Chair. Given that, as your report states, there is a risk that solid fuel appliances installed from 2026 to 27 may remain in use well beyond 2040, how will the Council encourage or help those residents who feel financially unable to move on from heating using wood-burning stoves, and will there be financial aid for those struggling to do so?
Thanks, Councillor Pickett, for the question. So just to preface the answer, obviously, if this is approved today, any stoves installed from this point onwards would necessarily be smoke control area and DEFRA approved, so they would still be able to continue using those stoves. But to come to the substantive answer, burning solid fuels, including in wood-burning stoves, is in most cases a secondary source of heating and not the primary method through which people heat their homes. Of course, there are variables such as the property size and type of property, but heating by burning solid fuels is generally not cheaper than using other types of heating. And that's because maintaining a consistent supply of suitable fuels for anything beyond occasional use can be very expensive. Under a new enlarged smoke control area, any new appliances installed in homes in the city would need to be DEFRA approved, and residents who have older non-compliant stoves would still have the option of burning approved fuels. Support is also available via the council website for anybody who's struggling with the cost of heating their homes. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Pickett and Councillor Okins. I'm going to invite Councillor Sykes to please come and ask his question.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, it's about the subsidised bus travel item. I'm just a bit confused about the numbers. So in the Cabinet paper, there's a line, it could have been 12.5 million in cost. The press release this week said it is 12.5 million in cost. There's somewhere, 1.5 million seems to have sort of gone astray. So the question is, the negotiated fixed deal with bus operators is estimated at 11.3 million, yet the resulting budget pressure over the 11 million approved budget for concessionary fares is 1.5 million, implying an overall cost of 12.5 million, subsequently confirmed in the press release. The financial implications are significant as they require an additional 1.5 million of in-year savings, but the calculation of the origin of this pressure is not clear. Can you please clarify and, if necessary, confirm that the total projected cost is indeed 12.5 million, which has been subsequently clarified in the press release? But so could Trevor, you tell us something about that, please? Thanks.
Yeah, through the Chair, thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question. To clarify, the total projected cost of covering concessionary fares for all bus operators is £12.5 million, as explained in the financial implications section of the report. Paragraph 6.1, information about how the Council has identified savings to meet this investment, is contained in paragraph 6.2 of the report. The budgeted amount to come from parking income, as agreed in part of the 26-27 annual budget process, is £11 million.
Councillor Sykes, I think you've got another question.
All right. Okay, that's the way we're working it. Thank you very much. Yep, I'll carry on. And I've also got, I can ask Councillor Shanks' question as well, if we've got time to do that. So, all right, question 16, bus travel again. Referencing the table in 3.7, please provide a separate figure within the 200k funding to go beyond statutory provision for the cost of providing subsidised fares to older persons travelling between 11 p.m. and 3:59 a.m. on weekdays. Thank you.
Thank you for the Chair. Thank you, Councillor Sykes, for your question. Over the last financial year, the cost of providing subsidised fares to older persons travelling between 11 p.m. and 3:59 a.m. was approximately £12,000. Thank you.
Councillor Sykes, by all means, yes, you can ask Councillor Shanks' question.
Thank you. This is question 17 about brickfields. So in January Cabinet, we were told that an independent valuation will be sought, and this risk is considered unlikely but would have a significant impact. If the council's costs can't be covered, then alternative option 1, which is council acts as landlord and procures an external managing agent, will be explored instead. While the total development costs have not been met, the received offer will achieve best consideration from the capital receipt. So Councillor Shanks is asking why Cabinet's changed its mind. The proposed provider is the only one prepared to take this on, so why not look again at the council running the provision, because 125 years is a long time. Thanks.
Councillor Alexander.
Please thank Councillor Shanks for her question. So as in the Cabinet report recommendation, we have revisited options and carried out detailed modelling that confirms that the least option continues to be the most financially viable option. If the council was the landlord, then we'd have to pay all of the development costs as well as the cost of the planned and major works and any voids. It is also not possible for us to reclaim 100% of the housing benefit subsidy, which we can do if a registered provider is the landlord. And also, if the council were to be the landlord, we would face future issues such as residents being able to legally continue staying at brickfields, even if they no longer required the care and the support that they needed when they first moved in. And this would, of course, take away valuable space from a person who needs it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sykes.
I want to probably ask Councillor Weston Landman's question.
Yes, they can.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Councillor Kay.
Thank
you. Want to ask?
I have a second question, so I'm going to ask mine first, and then I'll ask Councillor Lademacher, if that's okay.
Sorry, which number is your second question? I don't think I've got it on the...
So it will be on... the housing safety and quality item.
I've got one noted down from Councillor Lademacher on that subject.
Okay. I did have two, but that's fine. I will ask hers. So given that the regulator of social housing issued Brighton and Hove City Council with a C3 rating in August 2024 for serious failings in delivering the safety and quality standard, and considering the additional duties arising from Arab's law, can you outline what assurances can be given to council tenants that the reports of damp and mould and other emergency urgent hazards will be resolved within the required timelines, and what support can be provided to council tenants who have been living in unsafe conditions for extended periods of time?
Thank you for that question. So I'd like to begin with, as this chamber is aware, and I'll just remind the chamber as I've been asked the question, this administration inherited the conditions leading to the rating. And this is due to historic lack of investment and, I have to say, inaction by the previous administration. Nevertheless, we've taken the task of rectifying and improving conditions for our residents, because it really is important to emphasise that they are the important ones, and they are at the heart of what we do. And I'm proud of what we've achieved so far. As part of our work to become a great landlord, we are committed to improving the safety for and responsiveness to and satisfaction of our residents. And I'll set out in our housing safety and quality report our improvement journey and progress update for the Cabinet today is very positive, and it shows continuous and measurable progress across the compliance areas highlighted in the regulator's C3 rating. Now, in preparation for AWAB's law, which I think is what you were wanting me to talk about, ahead of the enactment of that, way ahead, we were in time and we were ready to go. We strengthened our response. So we stood up a dedicated team headed by, I have to say, our incredible Michaela, and I really want to say she has been utterly incredible, with her and her team in preparation. And we've strengthened our responses immeasurably with that special team to damp, mould and other urgent hazards, and quite right too, and that's exactly what we should be doing. And this is through proactive outreach. We've actually asked people to come and report to us, being proactive in encouraging people to come and report to us so that we can help them with damp and mould. Nobody should live with that. That's absolutely right. And we've got specialist case management software, and we've got regular performance monitoring, which is really, really important. And we are further increasing, because we've had such a lot of incidents and issues reported to us, we are increasing in-house and contractor damp and mould remediation capacity. And this is so important, and I'm so pleased that we're going in this direction in our journey. We are shifting towards more planned preventative maintenance models to alleviate pressures on the service. And this is really the key, and this is really the service that we want to be providing and are going towards providing. It's what our residents deserve. And thank you so much for your question.
Thanks, Councillor Macleay and Councillor Williams. Councillor Macleay, I understand from officers that we missed your second question, so apologies, and we will make sure you get a written response to it.
As I was going to ask, thank you, and note to self that I should check this before I arrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pickett, did you want to ask Councillor West's question?
Thank you, Chair. The report sets an ambition of supporting transition to electric vehicles by 2040. It states 8,000 charge points will be needed. However, the Cabinet is only planning to provide 6,000 by 2040. That's 75% of what is set to be required. Does the Cabinet member accept that the inadequacy of his plan seems to set to hamper the city fully achieving this important element of net zero?
Thank you, through the Chair. Thank you, Councillor Pickett, and for Councillor West's question, and for highlighting our administration's ambition to fully achieve net zero for our city, for our transport network. Unlike the Green Party administration, who had no plan, only vacuous words, this Labour administration has taken a clear, data-led approach to deliver. In 2023, our administration commissioned the Decarbonisation Pathway Study, which identified that thousands more charge points are needed for the city's transport system to reach net zero. The figure in our EV charging plan are deliberately presented as forecasts reflecting inherent uncertainty in demand through to 2040. The upper estimate of 8,000 charge points reflects a high demand scenario. Under lower demand scenarios, there's a greater utilisation of faster chargers and continued improvements in vehicle range and charging efficiency. With a greater use of rapid charging, the minimum requirement is currently estimated at approximately 1,650 charge points. With improved vehicle efficiency and a mix of slower residential provision and higher powered rapid and ultra rapid infrastructure, we expect to be ahead of our target. In practice, we are already delivering at scale. With our partner Chargee, we are proposing up to 6,000 lamp column charge points, building on the 500 plus installed with Blink. We also aim to deliver up to 1,000 fast charge points, and in partnership with Believe, around 200 rapid charge points launching this summer, and at least 2 ultra-rapid hubs. Our delivery programme of 6,000 charge points by 2040 should therefore not be seen as a fixed ceiling, but a scalable and responsive delivery plan. It has been designed to align with the observed uptake, technological advances and funding opportunities over time, rather than over-committing public resources based on a single high-end projection. This work is complemented by wider investment across the city, including the NHS, universities, businesses, filling stations and residents installing home chargers. Unlike the Greens who say and do not do, this data-led Labour administration plans to deliver. We are confident not only in meeting our targets, but exceeding them, positioning our city as a national leader in EV infrastructure for a credible delivery-focused approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eaton. Thanks, Councillor Pickett, for reading out Councillor West's question there. We now move on to member representations, and I believe that we have up first Councillor McKay.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the opportunity to respond to this report on fire safety and quality, and I want to begin by recognising the significant efforts of officers in the housing team following the regulator's judgment. The scale of that challenge should not be underestimated, and there has been an extensive list of required improvements. However, we must also acknowledge where we are, and despite commissioning additional contractors and revising timelines, the backlog in repairs remains. I was in this room last July highlighting the same concern about the backlog and not meeting your own deadlines. You can't blame the Greens for this. Labour were in charge for 8 out of the last 11 years. My key concern today is around fire risk assessments and the way risk is being reported. I think everyone in this chamber agrees that fire safety is not negotiable. Since Grenfell, we have all understood the consequences of getting it wrong. That is why the reports claim that there is only 2 high-risk outstanding FRA actions as of March 2026 raises serious questions. Firstly, what does high risk actually mean in this context? Is it equivalent to what external assessors identify as serious breaches? If it is, then the figures presented in the report do not align with evidence on the ground. For example, in my ward, the Thibault House fire risk assessment on the 8th of August 2025 identified 41 actions, 11 of which were classified as serious. Crucially, 28 of these actions were also presented in the previous year's assessment, suggesting issues are being carried forward rather than resolved. From a visit to Thibault House in April this year, there were several concerns that appear unresolved. These include the fire damage door that has still not been replaced, ongoing issues with communal fire doors not fitting correctly, mobility scooters being stored and charged in communal areas, despite a known fire risk linked to such activity on this site. And if these are not considered high-risk actions, then we urgently need to clarify or need clarity on what is. So I ask Cabinet members here today, during your discussions later, to address these 4 points. What is the precise definition of high, medium and low risk in this report? What are the 2 significant high-risk actions still outstanding? Where in this report are planned but incomplete fire safety works being accounted for? And why do serious breaches identified in external assessments, such as those at Theobald House, not appear to be reflected in the Council's figures? Transparency is crucial here, and residents must be able to trust that risks are being accurately reported and urgently addressed, and not reclassified or deferred. My key concern is that the Council may not be completing actions identified in FRAs and are carrying them forward year after year. It is serious and we should be looking at this.
Thank you, Councillor Maclay. I'd like to invite Councillor Pickett for your representation.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I say I'm really pleased to see the expansion of the smoke control area in Brighton Hove. You may remember that this is something I called for a couple of years ago, so it's good to see this finally happen. I've been working closely with some great local campaigners, many of whom are consultants at our hospital, who see firsthand the effects of airborne pollutants on people, and in particular on children's and older people's health, especially in areas such as Lewis Road. The evidence of the harm caused by dirty air, even at lower levels, has risen rapidly, and scientists now think it damages every organ in the body. Currently, it is estimated that air pollution is costing the country about 27 billion a year and is linked to asthma, cancer and dementia. Brighton and Hove is one of the highest densities of wood-burning stoves, and it is imperative that more is done to educate residents on the harm they cause, even if using DEFRA legally approved fuels or using DEFRA exempt stoves, because, as Dr. Gary Fuller from Imperial College and Brighton resident has said, evidence from the 21st century tells us there is no zero effect threshold for air pollution exposure. We need to do everything we can to eliminate all sources of PM 2.5. One particular concern I have, though, is related to enforcement. I am aware this is a national issue and linked to lack of officers. However, when we realise that from August 2024 to 25, over 15,000 complaints were made against wood burning in England, but only 24 fines were issued, we not only need to educate residents around the issue, but we have to set some sort of penalty enforcement for them to take this seriously and comply with the regulations. Finally, I quickly want to touch on the need for this administration to do more to push the current government in terms of environmental protections. Since the 2024 general election, the UK's environmental protections have continued to weaken. Labour held out the prospect of a Clean Air Act while in opposition in 2023, but have dropped it from the final election manifesto. The government has made no move to reinstate it. Furthermore, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has issued new guidance to house builders called the Future Home Standard that will allow wood-burning stoves that are not carbon neutral in the short or medium term to be installed in new housing, despite having indicated previously that the rules would require low-carbon heat pumps to be installed. This messaging is confusing, and not only scuppers plans for homes to be fully carbon-free, working against the ideal of net zero, it also continues the acceptance of stove use when we should be working on encouraging elimination in the long term. This administration could do so much to put pressure on the government to do more in this area. This delay is costing people's health and putting a further burden on our NHS and the economy. We can and should go further. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pickett, for your representation. I forgot to say earlier, but I will now say there have been no matters referred to the Cabinet for our consideration today. So then we will move now to the first of our substantive reports today, which is City Plan, formal commencement of plan making, and I'm going to ask Councillor Taylor to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I think one of the reasons that the city is so special, and one of the reasons certainly that I like living here, is its placement between the South Downs National Park and the sea. That certainly makes it a beautiful place to live, an enjoyable place to live for so many reasons, but it also makes it a tricky place from a planning perspective and from an allocation of land perspective. In simple terms, most councillors know and understand we don't have the availability of land that many other places in the UK have, but at the same time we have huge, in some cases almost unlimited demand for housing, because Brighton is obviously a fantastic place to live. Lots of people want to move here, and more importantly than that, lots of people who grew up here would like to stay here. But as we know, those two things, amongst many other factors, mean that we have a very, very severe housing crisis in the city at the moment, with all sorts of impacts, from the very visible street sleeping to perhaps the less visible impact of families just simply choosing to move out of the city to more affordable areas. So all of those factors and context mean that planning policy is particularly important in this city. Our current city plan is made up of two parts, and our city plan is the overall and most important planning policy document that the council as planning authority looks to when thinking about planning applications. This report initiates the formal start of a new Brighton and Hove city plan. It will no longer be a two-part plan, but will be a single consolidated local plan. The plan is really important because it does, at a high level, two very important things. It allocates the land in the city and its uses, and then it sets out policies on the use of that land. So the plan will formally set the long-term spatial strategy for the city. It will determine specific locations for homes, for jobs, and for other types of infrastructure. But it will also set out policies that ensure development respects things like character, heritage, and sustainability. And it may also do, and we will get into that as the process develops, it may also shape things like affordability and the building of affordable housing, perhaps things like a principal residence policy that I know some on this side would like to see, and perhaps things like changing HMO restrictions in certain parts of the city where we know that is often a pressure. Just to take a step back, the government has made a number of changes to the overall planning system, including the plan-making system, i.e. how local authorities make plans. And so we're now going to be operating under that new system, which was introduced in March of this year. In many ways, or I think in most of the ways, the changes are very beneficial, because the main thing they do is they bring the statutory timeline in. It's now a much quicker process. It reduces the burden on us as local authorities to provide evidence, which means we can go quicker at pushing forward the policies and allocations that we think are right for the city. And it introduces this thing called gateway stages, which are basically 3 stages at which there'll be checks as to whether the plan are likely to be compliant with overall policy. I do want to touch on consultation, which is members will be aware that we did a consultation from November 24 to 25, and that was a key issues consultation that tried to draw out what are the key themes and issues for the city, for residents, for social housing providers, for business, for industry, for public sector. What are the key issues about our planning policy and the use of land? Now that the new plan making system has been published, we do need to start a new consultation, but all of that information is hugely useful, and in a sense we will now do a short and focused consultation drilling into some of the key themes that emerged. Just to point out, and others will be not surprised by this, that the key themes that came through were overall a strong emphasis and support for affordable and social housing in the city. There was support for increased housing density in certain areas, and also an acceptance from many that there needs to be taller buildings in appropriate locations. It's just worth touching on the geographic scope of our plan and the consultation that we will launch. We can obviously only launch a consultation on the boundaries of us as a planning authority, and so that is the city boundary minus the South Downs National Park, which is a separate planning authority, although elements of that park obviously come within the municipal boundary of Brighton and Hove. It's also worth acknowledging that there is a live consultation at the moment on potential changes to local government boundaries, but the indication from government is very clear that local authorities should press on. They should access the funding that is available to us for being an early mover, which is a really good thing because we now get the funding to actually support doing this process. But there'll be further clarification from the government if boundaries were to change. I just want to turn to Appendix 2 in the report, which sets out the full proposed timeline that we're being asked to agree today in the report. So if we agree this approach today, we will give formal notice of our intention to start plan making, and the deadline for that is the 30th of June, but that will happen in a week in advance of that, and so we will formally notify government that we are going to start a new plan making process. We will then do a new scoping consultation that will draw out many of the issues that were previously raised in the consultation, but dig deeper into some of the trade-offs between those different things. Then there'll be an internal Gateway 1 assessment, which is a formal checking process at that stage of the consultation. Then there'll be further evidence gathering, then there'll be a set of elections in Brighton and Hove, and then there will be the larger consultation on the actual proposed plan, the content and the evidence, and then all of that will then take us forward through various review, gateway and government processes, and we hope to be able to adopt the new city plan at full council in March 2029. So just to confirm, we're not today giving permission or voting on any specific policies or allocations of sites. What we are doing is indicating that we want to proceed with being a very early adopter, proceeding with getting the government funding to support establishing a city plan and starting the consultation process to do that. And once we start that process, we will obviously then get into the discussions about the specific policies and housing allocations and site allocations, which will be extremely important given the shortage of land in the city. I hope Cabinet can support. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Daniel.
I think in wake of the news of the week and last week's disappointing results for our party, and people saying, well, what difference have we made? This absolutely, for me, shows the difference that a Labour government made, because we have gone through 15 years of Tories blocking any kind of development, any kind of growth, because they don't care about that. They just don't care about it. And this is us taking our step in the direction that gets voters who voted for us locally and for local MPs to create the jobs and homes and the energy infrastructure that they want. And, equally, I think beware of Greens, saying that they would be more radical or more, left-wing than us, because they, where they're actually in power, they object to everything. They want net zero energy, but when it comes to building the pylons to take that net zero energy to people's actual houses, they object to it. So I think whilst the public and some of us occasionally might find some of these processes and procedures, and even this paper, dare I say it, Councillor Taylor, slightly dull at face value, it is it is this dull work that unlocks the future of the city, the jobs of the city and the homes for the city. So thank you very much for doing some of that dull work, Councillor Taylor, and making it happen.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Of course, it's never dull when Councillor Taylor does it. Councillor Reaton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And I echo those points from Councillor Daniel. This is the difference that a Labour administration and Labour government can do. And it's vital that we really do have a plan as a starting point and commit to that plan. So it's great to see a timeline for this, a gateway process, which makes a lot of sense and involves consultation and community to go forward. And it is a plan-making process. But central within this is a placemaking process as well. So we can, it's not just about building lots of property and places for people to live, which is very much urgently needed, as we well know. It's got to be a standard which is good, and people want to call it home. And so it's vital that we do have a plan to build homes and to tackle our housing crisis, our homeless crisis, and all these things. But it is not as straightforward as providing somewhere to live. It's got to be about a place to live in, with services, the GPs, medical, social spaces, access to shops, etc. And central to that is a integrated transport system as well. Now, we did consult as a city on our city transport plan 2035. That looks at what we're trying to do for the next decade on transport, but is absolutely meshed with this. As we plan the city, we have an integrated approach to our transport, so that these people moving in and the residents presently here can readily move around our city and live a life so they can transport enables that. So I commend this paper, and within this process over the years to come, we work through and ensure we've got a transport system that matches this ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wheaton. Councillor Robin.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. And I've sat along with several other councillors through lots of meetings with Councillor Taylor. But I'd just ask Councillor Taylor to confirm, because I've seen it said on certain sites by certain people that this is the Cabinet ripping up City Plan Part 1 and City Plan Part 2 and introducing their own version. Can you just confirm with us that this adds to City Plan Part 1 and 2 and looks at some things that weren't a question when those plans were adopted several years ago, things like short-term lets and things like that. But just to clarify that, so that there can be no confusion and nobody getting the wrong end of the stick.
Yeah, certainly. Through you, Chair, it's a really important question. I mean, further than even that, and officers may want to come in with the specifics, but we actually have a statutory obligation to keep our plan updated and up to date. And then we have a new government mandated framework for doing our city plan. So this is absolutely nothing to do with ripping up the old plans and then starting with brand new ones that are totally different. As you say, what this will be about is developing a new plan that will essentially be iterations of the former plan, taking into account new national policy, changes in policy that we might want to make. Do we want to, as I say, introduce a principal residence policy for certain buildings, and can we do that legally? We'll have to explore that through the process. Are there certain sites that were previously occupied, whether they're former office blocks or otherwise, that now might want to be allocated as housing, but previously were not in the old plan? So, as you say, Councillor, this is not about ripping up an old plan and doing something totally different that we want to do. This is about following a government process that is statutory, that we have to keep our plans updated and relevant, and it's about reflecting the new realities of the city and national policy.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know what Councillor Daniel was reading, but I had so much fun I read it twice. This is one of the most important documents the Council can have. When I first stood for election in a different authority to this one, they were on the cusp of adopting a new local plan, and it was the most controversial thing. It came up on the doorstep constantly. A new party formed just to challenge the local plan, and they formed the administration after the election. They didn't last more than one administration, though, because that's what happens when you're a one-trick pony. And they didn't get the local plan revoked in the end anyway. But it just shows how important and controversial new local plans can be. But not having an up-to-date and sound local plan is really devastating for a council. I've done work in Arran, along the coast from us, where developers just have free rein in terms of what they go for, and the inspector has very little choice but to uphold it, even when planning committees are quite firm in their decision making. It's really important that we have a sound local plan. It's how we give our planning committees the tools they need to represent the needs of the city, the views of our residents, and how we make new good communities going forward in terms of planning. And this is us meeting that challenge, both in terms of new policy, as Councillor Taylor mentioned. I know Councillor Robertson and I, when we've been on planning committee, I think specifically about co-living as something that's emerged, which there was no policy for. And so we had very little scope for manoeuvre in deciding those applications, but also in actual allocations when you look at the map and where we need to fit in new types of development. So we need to do this. It's right that we're doing this, and I would encourage all of us around this table and councillors watching online, which I'm sure there are many, that we need to really push this and get engagement out there so that people can feed into both policies and allocations, because this will be with us for years to come, and we need to make sure that that we're thinking about what might be the challenges of tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, it is important. A city plan is important. It's important that we need to respond to the needs of our residents, and that is something that we are very good at. We're good at responding to the needs of our residents, and they've changed over years. And as we've heard, the housing crisis is one of the four most important issues this city is facing, and our city plan is responding to that and enveloping and encouraging and encompassing those challenges and ways we meet those challenges ahead, including, I'm pleased to hear about the progress of the principal residence policy, also including short-term lets policies, also including, where we build higher, more densified, etc., which we absolutely, utterly need if we are going to make a dent in this housing crisis. So it is really important that we continue to respond to the needs of our residents now and for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. I'm going to ask Councillor Miller to contribute.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo quite a lot of my colleagues' comments. Without a council plan and the determination to ensure that we have an up-to-date council plan, for which I would like to commend our senior leadership team, in particular Councillor Taylor, planning committees are constrained, and we end up with a city which does not reflect the desires and the ambitions of the residents who live there. And it then becomes very difficult to fulfill residents' voters' aims. And actually, it is absolutely essential that at all times we have an up-to-date council plan so that we are making decisions informed by the city and by the city's priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. On that note, I think there is strong agreement that we move forward. Does the Cabinet agree with the recommendations as set out in this report, including the timetable and the scoping document? Agreed. Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Taylor. We move to our second report this afternoon, which is improving our electric charging infrastructure. Councillor Mouton.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet. I want to be very clear about why this paper matters and why it matters now. In December 2018, Brighton and Hove City Council declared a climate emergency. When this administration came into office 3 years ago, we were generally concerned. No, we were shocked to discover that Brighton and Hove did not have a pathway mapped to decarbonise transport. Despite strong statements over several years from the Green Party in administration before us about reaching net zero, in power they had no plan, only vacuous words. So when in 2023 we lifted the bonnet, we found no evidence-based plan showing how the city would actually reach net zero for transport. No assessment of risk, no clear sequencing of interventions, no agreed delivery framework, no plan. That was unacceptable for a city that prides itself on environmental credentials. Without a plan to get to net zero, the Green Party had again let our city down when it came to the environment. So in 2023, as a priority, our Labour administration commissioned the Decarbonisation Pathway Study, as brought to the then Transport Sustainability Committee, which I chaired. We set out to answer a very simple question. What does the data tell us we must do, and in what order, if Brighton and Hove is to reach net zero? The Decarbonisation Pathway Study drove a data-led approach to decarbonising transport and is fundamental to our EV charging strategy being discussed here today. It's not a slogan or a vacuous wish list. It is a rigorous, evidence-based analysis of Brighton and Hove's emissions across sectors, including transport, drilled down to neighbourhood level using real vehicle energy and air quality data. So what it told us is clear. Transport emissions cannot be reduced by a single intervention. Behavioural change alone will not get us there. And crucially, cleaner vehicle technology must play a role alongside public transport and active travel. And to reach net zero for transport, the decarbonisation pathway study stated that our city would need thousands more public EV charge points. That is why we consulted with the public on our EV charging strategy last year, and the response we had informs this update today. It is only one part of a wide integrated transport decarbonisation programme grounded firmly in evidence, not ideology. So why electric vehicles matter, especially for air quality? We know from Brighton and Hove's long-standing air quality monitoring programme, significantly expanded and improved under this administration, that road transport is a major contributor to nitrogen dioxide and particulate pollution, particularly in our busiest corridors and our busy residential areas. In 2023, we commissioned a significant increase in air quality data monitoring across the city and made this accessible to all online in real time. And the data is unambiguous. Vehicles with zero tailpipe emissions make a dramatic and immediate difference to local air quality. An electric vehicle produces zero nitrogen dioxide at the roadside, zero exhaust particulates, and significantly less noise. This is not theoretical, it is borne out by local monitoring and national evidence, and is why EV Update features prominently in both our air quality action plan and our decarbonisation pathway study. Cleaner vehicles means healthier streets, fewer respiratory illnesses, and better quality of life, particularly for children, older people, and those with existing health conditions. But let me be clear, EVs are not the whole answer. The Council remains unequivocally committed to public transport, walking, wheeling and cycling as the most space-efficient, healthy and equitable way to move around the city. Buses, including this Council's enabled fully electric double-decker fleet, launched last month. Active travel, for our focus on better design and demand reduction, remain at the height of our transport hierarchy. But this evidence also tells us something else. Some journeys will continue to require a vehicle for disabled residents, carers, tradespeople, taxis, deliveries and regional travel. And we recognise there is value in choice. When those journeys happen, it matters enormously what powers a vehicle. This strategy is about cleaning the miles that matter, not encouraging car use, but removing toxic tailpipes. So why is public EV charging so critical in Brighton and Hove? So Brighton and Hove is not a city of driveways. Around 2/3 of households have no access to off-street parking, which means that without public charging, the transition to EVs simply would not be fair or practical. Many residents say they would like to transition to EV, but feel living on a terrace, flat or a home without a driveway is a prohibitive barrier to their environmental choice. We need to build infrastructure that removes this barrier and enables this choice. That is why this strategy focuses strongly on public, on-street and communal charging that serves every community, not just rapid hubs. It includes city-wide resident on-street charging, lower cost off-peak nighttime charging with partners who can secure low energy prices, fast chargers in car parks and neighbourhood centres, rapid and ultra-rapid hubs for longer trips and shorter stops, and integration with park and ride and future transport interchanges. Brighton and Hove is leading our nation on public EV charge point rollout. As a council, we already have 500 public charge points, or over that, in fact. Under this strategy, this will grow to more than 6,000 public lamp column chargers by 2040, with around 1,650 installed in the next 3 years alone. In addition, we plan 1,000 fast charge points, 200 rapid chargers, and at least 2 ultra-rapid charging hubs. This means we have the largest on-street charge point charging programme in the UK, significant investment in government's local electric vehicle infrastructure or levy grant scheme, long-term concession contracts that protect the public interest while delivering at scale, a plan to deliver in excess of that required to decarbonise the city transport. With our administration's national leadership in EV charging rollout, other councils are now looking to Brighton and Hove as a model of how to do this properly, at pace, at scale, and with equity at the core. And fairness and accessibility is at the heart of our delivery. This strategy also includes innovative solutions such as pavement gully pilot, enabling residents without driveways to charge safely from their homes. Because fairness matters just as much as carbon reduction, this pilot will initially prioritise blue badge holders using our electric vehicle pavement charging grant, or EVPCG, and working closely with Motability, who have an official policy to transition their customers to EV. We are here to help and to prioritise taxi drivers' transition to EVs. So let me end where I began. This EV charging strategy and update is not about forcing change. It's about infrastructure leading the way. It's removing barriers, providing confidence, and as residents, businesses and visitors opt for cleaner vehicles, Brighton and Hove is ready for them. It sits alongside investment in buses, active travel and safer streets. It's data-led, rooted in a decarbonisation pathway evidence. We have consulted and listened, and it reflects our commitment to a cleaner, healthier, fairer city. This is what climate action looks like, and under this Labour administration, I'm proud that Brighton and Hove is once again leading the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mooton. This is a really exciting and important report, and I really appreciate the work you and officers have done to bring it forward to us. Clearly, this is the future of transport, and the sooner we can transition to clean, sustainable and independent sources of energy production, the sooner we move away from being reliant on sources that are not clean, on sources that see spikes in prices for our residents, and make day-to-day living and the cost of living all the harder. So I'm glad that we are leading the country already. I'm glad that we've got an ambitious proposal to roll out more charging infrastructure, and I'm also particularly pleased to see this cross-pavement initiative. This is something that I know residents are keen to see. I think it's a good idea to start with blue badge holders and with taxis as well, because those are key areas where we can make progress. And I would hope that if this pilot is ultimately successful, that we could see a rapid expansion of it. Because we know, I think it's over half of our residents in the city don't have off-street parking. We know that the affordability of electric vehicles will hugely increase if people do have access to a cross-pavement option, rather than needing to rely solely on the charging points that we are putting in, and are of course a really important part of the mix. But I think this really holds the key to unlocking the affordability challenge of electric vehicles. So I'm really pleased to see this coming forward. Councillor Rokins.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Mooton, as always, for the comprehensive introduction. Net zero in this city, like many others, is essentially a story of boilers and cars. And, I'm taking care of the boilers and you're obviously leaving the cars in safe hands. You refer to the obvious environment benefits in terms of EV uptake, and also the air quality benefits. And I know we're going to talk about air quality a bit more later, and obviously both of those are massive drivers of why this is important. But also just want to sort of point out that I don't know how many people in this chamber have actually driven an EV. That they are actually just better as a vehicle and as an experience. You might have seen a few months ago, I think it was now, there was a kind of meme that went round on social media that was kind of parodying the myths and the myth busting that goes on around, like, you know, people who've got petrol cars and saying, oh, I'm thinking of getting an EV, but is it true that it's this? Is it true that it's that? And all the sort of negativity. And they did it the other way around, and it was, I've currently got an EV, but I'm thinking of going back to thinking of buying a petrol car. But I've heard, for example, that you can't refuel your car overnight while you're asleep. Is that true? And I've heard that there's all these parts that need changing, like oil and filters and all that kind of stuff. Is it true? So, you know, it's a better experience, much lower maintenance, and you know, there's been a lot of discussion about the cost parity. I think we're basically already at the point where an EV is about the same cost as a as a new internal combustion engine car at the point of purchase. But of course, the lifetime costs are already substantially lower, and I think we hit that price parity point about 5 years ago now. So that sort of business case thing is well established. Worth just looking at the market share of EVs in the country and the sort of trend of that. In 2024, it was 19.6% EVs. 2025 last year, 23.4%, 23.4. This year to date, up to the end of April, it was already 23.1. So, you know, you can see really significant growth in that. The national target for 2026 is 33%. So we are, you know, as a country, we're below our ideal target in terms of EV uptake. But I think what we're clearly saying here is that, you know, we are basically removing one of the major barriers to EV uptake, which is readily accessible charging infrastructure. So I think this sends a really clear message to our residents and businesses and visitors to the city, which is that, you know, if you're considering moving to an EV at some point, charging will not be a problem for you here in Brighton and Hove. Just a quick bit on cost. I think the other really important point of this is that as well as massively scaling up the numbers of EV charging that we have, we're also scaling up the number of providers and therefore the competition that exists in the city, and already that's having significant downward pressure on those prices, and I think that's a really crucial part of the equation for residents and people who are EV curious, shall we say. The cross pavement channels, I think, is, I mean, I've certainly got residents on my street as well as elsewhere in the city who've been lobbying hard to get this up and running for quite some time. I'm really excited to see it coming forward. It obviously provides more options, but again drives down the sort of overall cost options for people considering it. I think focusing on the Motability scheme is really sensible because of their policy to go fully EV. But you know, the taxi thing is really important as well. You know, thinking about the air quality bit, it makes total sense if you're trying to tackle transport-derived air quality to focus first on the older diesel vehicles in particular that are out on the streets for 8 hours or more every day, and those are taxis and also commercial vehicles. So that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, we're already leading the country with our EV charging, but I'm very pleased to see that that's not enough for you, Trevor. So yeah, very, very full-throated support on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Akins. Councillor Robin.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Newton, for your usual full and frank presentation. I'd just like to say a couple of things. Firstly, I think you identified a problem that's existed in past administrations here, and it's easy to identify problems. It's not so easy to try and fix them. Once you try and fix them, you open yourself to criticism in some cases. So I think past administrations have sort of thought, well, let's say the problem is cars, now that's that sorted, so we can carry on with something else. But also, I hope that this, talking about cross-pavement and various other ways of getting electric charging points to where they're needed, I hope this stops the scourge of people turning their front gardens into blooming driveways. I know where I live, when I moved up there, it's called Burlington Gardens, and we all had front gardens. I should imagine we're the only ones still got our front gardens. And it is, not only does it cause a problem when it rains because all the water simply now runs down the drain because there's nowhere for it to but they're a haven for wildlife. I think we've had a sparrow nesting in our roof for the last 30 years. I don't suppose it's the same sparrow, it might be. They do very well if it is. But
Thanks, Councillor.
I'm sorry, I'm just waffling on again, aren't I? But it is something that irritates me that all these driveways are turned into all the gardens turned into driveways, and one of the excuses used is, well, I need it for EVs, so I hope that we can bring the EVs to the road. Sorry, Chair, for waffling on, but it's what I do.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins. I'm going to bring in, have I got any more comments on this report? No, in which case, are Councillor Mooton wanting to come back?
To Chair, briefly, and just echo Councillor Robbins' point about problems are easy to identify and they're hard to fix, but I think actually with some real splendid officers we have here and present in the room today, I do thank them for their hard work, but also we're ambitious. And I want to be clear about this in terms of some parts of the city are really difficult to park. And so we're not, and so the cross-pavement solution isn't necessarily the right solution for every part of the city. We'll be very cautious. But I think this is what we're doing. A trial is really, very important, and it gives us an opportunity to learn lessons. We'll learn lessons, what we've heard elsewhere. We're very tuned to what government is guiding us on. But I think the highlight of this is actually public charging points, lamp column points. We're going to put them everywhere. The idea is across the city, every ward, every part of the city, irrespective of, poorer or privileged areas of the city, there will be charging points. And the point that Councillor Rokin rightly says, we're driving down the cost through a bit of competition. And I have to say, I've met with Chargy and I've met with Believe. Those two providers are deeply passionate and deeply committed to our city to make this work. And they are large enough to get some really good deals on the energy prices as well. So I think we've got a bit of work to do with government in trying to get the VAT down, but that's something I wish to keep working on. But we can get to the point where actually plugging in on the public charge points is actually more effectively sometimes a cheaper option rather than having to pay for quite expensive cross pavement. So when you look at it carefully, look at the costs associated with that, and that's what the pilot will tell us. And I think Councillor Rokin, you're absolutely right. The cost of second-hand EV is coming down. The take-up nationally is going up. And this has come generally, once you have an EV, it's a pleasure to drive. You wouldn't, if combustion engines didn't exist, you wouldn't invent them. You don't have to fill up in dirty fuels at the petrol filling station and have gasoline tailpipe emissions causing air quality problems, and the running costs are so much lower. So it's a great move, and once the infrastructure is there, it enables, it takes away the barrier. We'll see the change that we're hoping that the residents are actually calling for and wanting to see this change. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Mooton. That's all really clear and good to have a good discussion on this. I think it's notable that just over 4% of vehicles registered in our city are currently electric, but we saw a 30% increase in that figure between September 24 and 25. And I think the proposals laid out here are really the key to helping to unlock, increasing escalation in the uptake of these vehicles. Are Cabinet colleagues happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed. Excellent. Thank you, colleagues. That brings us to our next substantive report, which is investing in subsidised bus travel, and we have Councillor Mooton back centre stage.
Thank you, Chair, colleagues. I want to begin by setting out why concessionary travel matters so much to Brighton and Hove, and why this report before you today is an important, positive and progressive outcome for our residents. Concessionary bus travel is not just a statutory requirement for this council, it is a lifeline for many people in our city. It enables older residents to remain active, independent and socially connected. It ensures disabled residents can travel with freedom and dignity at the times that they need, not just when the minimum scheme allows. And in a city like ours, where buses play such a central role in daily life, it underpins access to jobs, health services, shops, community and the wider economy. Brighton and Hove is different from many other places. We are a compact, densely populated city with one of the busiest and most successful bus networks in the country. We also host millions of visitors each year and have a strong commuter flow in and out of the city. That success is something to be proud of, but it has a direct impact on the cost of running concessionary travel. There is a central government reimbursement tool that councils can use to calculate how much they pay bus operators for concessionary journeys. If we were simply to apply that tool to Brighton and Hove, the cost to this council would be significantly higher than it already is. High passenger numbers, excellent bus use, visitors and commuters all drive up reimbursement levels in highly populated urban areas like ours. That is why, for many years, Brighton and Hove has taken a different approach. Rather than automatically applying a national formula that doesn't properly reflect our local circumstances, we negotiate directly with our bus operators. The outcome from these negotiations in today's report continues that approach and how we've secured a better deal for the city, one that protects residents, meets our statutory responsibility and delivers better value for money for the public. This matters because we already invest heavily in concessionary bus travel. In 2026-27, the council expects to spend around £12.5 million, including an additional £1.5 million agreed through our budget setting process. This increase reflects rising demand for concessionary travel and our continued commitment to support some of the most vulnerable residents in our city. That investment is funded through parking income, consistent with our principles of reinvesting transport-generated revenue into sustainable and inclusive travel. At the same time, I want to be clear about what residents get in return for that investment. Our concessionary travel offer goes well beyond the statutory minimum. In Brighton and Hove, older residents can travel earlier in the morning than the national scheme requires, supporting access to work, volunteering, care and responsibilities and early appointments. Disabled pass holders benefit from 24-hour travel, giving genuine all-day and all-night access to buses. This is not the case for our neighbouring authorities. And also to add, the older residents can also travel after 11 o'clock in the evening as well, so up until 4 in the morning. These extended hours are not accidental. They reflect the realities of our city, a strong nighttime economy, shift work, early starts and late finishes, and a visitor economy that means services run beyond standard hours. More importantly, they reflect our values, ensuring that the older and disabled residents are not restricted or excluded from taking part fully in our city life. As you would expect, this generous and accessible scheme is well used. We currently have around 42,000 concessionary pass holders, including approximately 35,000 older people and 7,000 disabled residents. Usage continues to grow, with some routes seeing increases up to 16% over the past year. That high uptake is a sign of success. It reflects a bus network people trust and use, including popular express services and recently launched fully electric double-decker buses that the council actively supports. But it also explains why our costs are higher and in places higher than in places with much less frequent and poorer bus services or lower passenger numbers. In short, our concessionary travel bill reflects the fact that buses really work in Brighton and Hove. Alongside concessionary travel, the council continues to invest in a wider bus network, supporting key services, progressing bus priority feasibility work and the using the local authority bus grant to invest a further £9 million to improve services and keep fares affordable for local people. These complementary investments reinforce the role of buses as a sustainable, accessible, inclusive mode of transport that benefits everybody in the city. So, taken as a whole, this report tells a clear story. It shows how we have recognised the unique characteristics of Brighton and Hove, negotiated intelligently on behalf of residents, protected an enhanced concessionary offer, and managed significant financial pressures responsibly. We're not just meeting our legal duties, we are doing so in a way that supports independence, inclusion and sustainable transport while securing the best possible value for the city. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Aiton. A really, really important report, and delighted to see these proposals coming forward and the increased investment that we're putting into this. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on one point. So I'm very pleased that we are keeping our older people happy by allowing them to stay up and stay out until 4 in the morning. Is that correct? And I'm sure that really helps keeping our nighttime economy buoyant. So it's really good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do I have any more comments or questions on this report and the policy that we're putting forwards? Yes, Councillor Wooten.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Williams, it is correct. From 3:59 in the morning, you can use your concessionary pass that means we're expecting older people to get home by 11 o'clock. They can stay up and have a night out and get back when they choose. So thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I'm going to ask that we go into part 2 for the items in here that are in part 2. So I need to say, I now propose a resolve to exclude the press and public under section 100A, section 4 of the Local Government Act 1972 and move to confidential session. cleaner air for Brighton and Hove through improved smoke control areas. And I'd like Councillor Rokins to please introduce this report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councils deliver a huge range of services: bins, roads, social care, education, but we also have a fundamental responsibility to protect the health and indeed the lives of our residents, especially the most vulnerable people in our communities. The biggest single environmental risk to human health is something over which we have no control as individuals: the air we breathe. Poor air quality causes around 7 million deaths globally each year. Here in the UK, it's estimated that between 30 and 40,000 people die each year due to exposure to air pollution. And the biggest driver of these deaths is long-term exposure to fine particulate matter, known as PM2.5. So where does this fine particulate matter come from? In 2023, DEFRA figures showed that domestic burning of solid fuels was the largest single source of PM2.5 pollution in the UK, ahead of all road transport combined. The latest figures for 2024 have domestic burning a very close second to road transport at 10.8 kilotons and 11.3 kilotons respectively. So what about local data? Well, first, Brighton and Hove has one of the biggest concentrations of wood-burning stoves anywhere in the UK, with an estimated 7,500. That's about 88 stoves for every square kilometre. Second, we now have a comprehensive set of air quality measurements from across the city from the real-time monitoring network we launched in the autumn of 2024. Previously, we weren't really able to say with any confidence that the pollution from solid fuels was a problem everywhere. Well, now we can. Data from the winter 2024 to 25 was striking. It showed that PM2.5 levels were, on average, 91% higher during the winter months compared to the rest of the year. Data from 4 city primary schools showed levels 78% higher. Air quality sensors told a similar story right across the city. Now, I don't believe you can look at this data and not feel compelled to act. And indeed, the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee reviewed this data last year and voted unanimously to recommend that Cabinet progress the plans we have here in front of us today to expand our smoke control area. Now, I want us to be clear on what a smoke control area is, but I'll start with what it is not. It is not a ban on wood burners. It is also not a ban on barbecues. In fact, smoke control area legislation applies only to buildings and so doesn't cover any form of outdoor burning. The aim of a smoke control area is to ensure that any burning that does happen is as clean as possible. That means either only burning fuels on the DEFRA approved list or using an approved appliance. And the difference, by the way, between an approved appliance and one that is not approved is huge, burning much more efficiently and producing far less PM2.5. Now, we currently have 5 existing smoke control areas brought in by Brighton Borough Council in the 1970s and covering parts of central Brighton, Hanover, Bevendine and the Montpellier area. What Cabinet is being asked to approve today is that we revoke these 5 small smoke control areas and replace them with a single one covering the whole urban area of Brighton and Hove. That would mean that everyone in the city will have the same protections, and it will enable us to provide clear and consistent messaging to all of our residents and set robust expectations for the suppliers of stoves and fuels. The impact of poor air quality falls disproportionately on vulnerable groups, young children, our older residents, and those with existing health conditions. And I believe we owe it to them to take whatever practical steps we can to ensure that the air we all breathe is clean and safe. And this is one such practical step. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Rokins. Really clear, really important report, and credit to you and officers for the leadership that you've showed on this. I know there's been work going on over a significant amount of time to sequence this right and to put the right measures in place. Comments or questions? Councillor
Allen.
Thank you, Chair. So I had a look earlier, and improving air quality was mentioned 3 times in our election manifesto in 2023. So I think it's great that we're delivering on yet another manifesto pledge. I'll never let one go by without pointing that out. But I'd wonder if Councillor Rokins, having considered Councillor Pickett's representation earlier, saying how the Green opposition has been calling for this for some time, if Councillor Rokins could elaborate on why now is the moment to launch this new policy.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Allen. Very good question. Yeah, I mean, I recall Councillor Pickett and the Greens calling for this a little while ago in the form of an Argus piece. Yeah, I mean, basically, a lot of the things that I've just described were not in place at that time, and I think the sequencing of this, and as with any policy like that, it's really important to be led by the evidence and the data, and not just sort of working kind of off the cuff. So I suppose that I'd say there's 3 key things that have happened in the intervening period, which in my view are crucial. Number 1 is the data that I just described. So, you know, it was autumn 2024, we set up this new air quality monitoring network, real-time air quality monitoring network. I've talked about it in this chamber lots of times before. You can go on at any time and you look at, I think it's 54 sensors dotted around the city, and they will give you live readings of a range of different pollutants. So, you know, that's enabled us to really build up a picture of what pollutants are happening where in the city and at what times, on all sorts of timescales. You can do it by 15 minutes, you can do it by daily averages. So it's enabled us basically to say what I said in my opening remarks, which is that we now know that this is a problem to one extent or another across the city. It's not you know, solely focused on certain areas. The other thing is that obviously for the last 2 winters, we've run public awareness campaigns on solid fuels and the health impacts of them, and so the aim of that has been to really sort of build the public awareness of the problem. And I think like a lot of things in politics and public policy and public health, you know, coming forward with a solution is much easier when you know that people understand what the problem is, and you can really sort of join the dots on those. And then I think because of that, the other thing that I haven't mentioned that might come out in the comments, but it is included in the paper, is the public consultation that we did. The public consultation, of the respondents, 77% of them agreed to the need for smoke control areas in some form. And of those 77%, 63% agreed that the smoke control area should be expanded, either to cover the entire local authority footprint, or what's being proposed is the urban area, the area also covered by city plan, or in other words, the planning authority. Now, obviously there are parallel universities out there maybe where you did this policy without all of that data and without the sort of hard work that we've gone to sequence it. But I would suggest that we would not have the level of support in the public consultation had we not really clearly set out that data, including local data from primary schools and all those kinds of things which we didn't have before, and also raised awareness of the problem in the first place. And, you know, there was a bit of criticism with our public awareness campaign that it was sort of hard-hitting and scaremongering and stuff. I actually don't buy that. From what I saw, yeah, there were some people who made those kinds of noises, but I genuinely saw conversations happening online that were really sort of like, wow, I had no idea of the extent of this problem. I think we really have, you know, it was an eye-catching and a deliberately hard-hitting campaign, but I think it really has led people to really sort of think about this stuff. So that's a long answer, but I hope that sets out why I think now is the time to do it, because I think we've made a really, really clear case. And for anyone that's interested in it, we can point to a really comprehensive and rigorous set of data that underpins the need to do it. So thanks for the question. I hope that answers it.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. So you said earlier on that Brighton and Hove have the largest percentage of wood burners in the city than anywhere else in the country.
One of, yeah.
One of, thank you. Okay. I'm just wondering have we got any idea what percentage are these DEFRA approved ones and what not? And conversations I've had with residents that I don't think they really, even people who you would imagine would understand,
don't really understand the difference. So you've said a lot of comms has been already done, but perhaps more is needed for people to have a better understanding. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Robinson. I mean, we don't have data, I don't think anyway, not that I've seen, on how many of the wood-burning stoves are DEFRA approved and how many aren't. The smoke control area legislation has obviously been around generally since the 1970s. There are several other cities that have gone down the route of having a local authority wide, or at least a much wider coverage of smoke control areas. So the upshot of that is that a decent proportion of modern stoves that are sold and fitted are DEFRA approved, and so you would expect obviously that with the city being covered by a smoke control area, a single one, that all of those would be in the future. But yeah, we could probably try and find out, but I'd be surprised if we have the data, to be honest, because there's no requirement for people to register a wood burner when they buy one, so there's no obvious vehicle through which we would have collected that data. But I'd be interested to see it if we did have it.
Mr. Robbins.
Yeah, there's one thing I'd like to mention. Thank you again, Chair. And that is, I note that you were saying this is not a ban on barbecues, this is not a ban on outside burning, but it worries me that it's not, because you see the rise in things like fire pits, people burning fire pits out in their back gardens till late at night on a still summer's night when other people have got their windows open. Must be at least as dangerous as somebody having a wood burner indoors. And whereas you could sort of give an argument for having a wood burner to keep you warm on a cold winter's night, I don't see how you can raise an argument for lighting a fire pit to keep your back garden warm on an already fairly warm, still summer night. So I think I understand why it's perhaps not able to place a ban on these things or whatever, but could we perhaps extend the educational side of it into saying to people, and don't forget, if you're burning leftover wood or whatever you've got on a fire pit on an August evening, it's at least as bad as if you've got a wood burner indoor.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. Very, very good point. I mean, the only reason it doesn't include outdoor burning is because the legislation doesn't allow it, so we don't have the choice over that. You're quite right, and in fact, actually, a fire pit is a whole lot worse than a wood burner. At least with a wood burner, the temperature that is reached in the combustion is higher because it's contained, and the higher the temperature, the more efficient the burning, which is why open fireplaces are the worst of the indoor burning, and then it gets better as you go down through the wood burning stoves and stuff. So yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think hopefully the messaging and communications we've done so far has raised awareness of the general principle. But I think you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that people are in possession of the facts and the impacts of what they're doing, particularly on their neighbours. What I will say is, although we can't enforce that or address it through smoke control area legislation, we can go via the statutory nuisance bit. So if there's a lot of smoke outside someone's house, whatever, that can be reported, it can be investigated, and we can enforce. But it's a bit of a higher bar, it must be said.
Thank you, Councillor Robbins and Councillor Rokins. I've got Councillor Meaton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Rokins, for a very comprehensive and concise presentation, and it is appreciated. I want to pick up on Councillor Allen's point about Councillor Pickett's presentation here today, and your response, Councillor Rokins, to that. I do recall earlier in administration, the Greens were asking us questions about smoke control areas and whether we might expand them, etc. And I was certainly reflected on that, because it was very noted that they didn't take action on that when they had the power to do that themselves. Perhaps reflecting on the Green Party being a campaign organisation rather than a party of power in terms of getting things done. But it's great that as a data-led administration, our priority was to set up real-time air quality monitoring, which is publicly available, a network of air quality monitors and with data which informs our decision process. That's when we strengthened that network when we came into administration, and that data told us something very important, as you describe, where we got this heightened PM 2.5 levels, which can be clearly shown to be associated with certain evenings in winter, which you get these spikes of poor air quality. And so this has driven us to say there is a need, and it's across the city, and we've got a high solid fuel burning rate. And so the data has led to this point, not just a campaign nice to have and really don't know what's going on, but we don't like it, but actually a data-led approach. But also, I want to emphasise that PM 2.5 is also transport related, and so there's a part of that which we're also tackling from air quality, both in terms of particulates and also at NOx as well. Really focusing, as we presented earlier in this meeting, on tailpipe emissions, really cutting them down with better, cleaner transport, be that fully EV or Euro 6 engines, etc., and working with encouraging more public transport and getting our buses cleaner across the city, particularly the launch of our fully EV double-deckers in the city last month, but also, and that's expanding in that fleet, but also ensuring that all the buses in our city are Euro 5, Euro 6 yearless compliant, and also encouraging other forms of active travel and other movements as well. So it's an integrated approach, and we're working on all fronts to improve air quality. And I want to credit you, Councillor Rokins, for the hard work you're doing in terms of this aspect to make this a cleaner city. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say how much I agree with this proposal, and I say this as somebody but before I moved to Brighton, had a wood burner that was deeply attached to. I still miss it emotionally, but I, persuaded by my son actually, who's very data led, I realised that actually it was not to install a wood burner would not be a responsible thing to do, particularly for our future generations. There's increasing evidence about the impact on fetal development. So expecting mothers living in areas with high air pollution are more likely to experience low birth weight. They're more likely to experience intrauterine growth retardation. And those conditions are more likely to result in adult metabolic disorders, hypertension, diabetes. There's actually quite a long list. And there are even some congenital disorders which are associated with. And even they're beginning to look at correlations with stillbirths and preterm birth. If we care about our future generations, we have to do this. So thank you for taking this forward.
Thanks. Councillor Rokins.
Yeah, I'll just respond to a couple of bits before wrapping up, if that's all right. I'll be brief. But just on the point that Councillor Newton made and that was picked up by Councillor Pickett earlier on the enforcement bit, and she was talking about this story that came out recently about local authorities around the country who have smoke control areas in place not issuing fines. I mean, I can't speak for other local authorities, but by way of reassurance to our residents, I just want to sort of be really clear that our approach on the enforcement side of things is not going to be to go around knocking on people's doors and slapping fines on them straight away. Our first port of call is always going to be to inform, to educate, to help people to understand, and that has actually, we started an enforcement pilot when we really started doing the awareness raising last winter on this, and that was very much the approach. So where we found areas where there was persistent smoke, we were writing letters, we were having conversations, and we didn't issue any fines. Now, that's not to say we won't, and that's not to say that there isn't a case for doing so, but I think certainly at this stage we would much rather take people with us on the journey and make sure that people are making informed choices than slapping fines on people. And just very briefly, just on the alternative options considered. So that really this was a choice between expanding to cover the entire local authority footprint, or what we've decided to do, or what's presented here today, is to cover the urban area only. And coming back to the thing about being data-led, the covering the entire local authority boundary, whilst kind of neat and makes sense on a map, more than 99% of domestic and commercial buildings fall within the urban environment. Does it really make sense to have, you know, one little isolated farm cottage up on a hill in the South Downs somewhere covered by a smoke control area? Not really. And realistically, are we going to go and send people up there to enforce it anyway? No, we're not. The data and the public health impact is where you've got high density of burning happening in a lot of properties where there are a lot of people to breathe it in. That's why we've gone for that approach, and that's why I'm putting that forward to you all today. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Okins. Are colleagues happy to agree the recommendations in this report? Agreed, thank you. I'm going to suggest that we have a 10-minute comfort break and come back here at 4:20 to discuss the next two reports. Thank you. Yeah, great. So our next report this afternoon is our council housing asset management plan, and I'd like Councillor Williams to please introduce this for us. Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Now, this report asks Cabinet to approve the Council Housing Asset Management Plan for 2026-27, so it's our yearly report to you. And this is the Council's one-year framework for managing and investing our council homes and estates. And I do want to remind people we do have over 12,500 council homes that we manage, so that is quite a lot of council homes. Now, the plan is important because it provides a very clear and transparent basis for how we prioritise our investment decisions in council homes and estates to manage risk, keep our residents safe, improve our housing quality and support a financially sustainable housing revenue account. We want that it is breaking even, we want it to continue to do so. It also sets a clear route to develop a longer-term asset management strategy as our evidence base and resident engagement continue to improve. And I'll just go through the key elements for you. So the key elements of the plan are a clear focus on safety and compliance, better stock condition data through a full survey programme. So we're going to have a full survey programme of all of our stock, which hasn't really been done for quite some time. It is necessary. A stronger use of our resident feedback in shaping priorities. What we've all found, I think we can all agree on in every area of the council, the more we listen to our residents, the easier it is to get it right. I think we have to listen more. And I think this is the key to our success, which we are doing. A deliverable one-year action plan, which this is, and of course a rolling 5-year investment view, and a clear framework for governance, assurance and accountability. The plan aligns with 54 million of a planned investment in 26-27, and this is to improve quality, safety and sustainability of council homes, alongside 2 million being invested over 2 years for a full stock condition survey programme, absolutely essential for our future. So the plan provides a clear one-year delivery plan, a rolling 5-year investment view, and this will be reviewed and refreshed annually. It is transparent about the way we need to improve, particularly in strengthening stock knowledge and data through our full survey programme, but it makes clear that we will not delay action on safety and essential investment while that work continues. The plan also strengthens how resident voice and insight informs decisions, with clearer routes for residents to shape our priorities, to understand what is being delivered and to see how that feedback is being used. And this is to ensure resident voice shapes the priorities, sequencing and accountability. So the prioritisation approach set out in the plan is clear. Safety and legal duties come first, followed by tackling major risks in home and buildings, then addressing the underlying causes of repeat repairs. And this is followed by a wider planned improvement as evidence and affordability will allow. Approval of this plan gives the Council a practical framework for 26-27 with annual refresh, while also setting a route to develop a more comprehensive multi-year council housing asset management strategy as our stock condition evidence base improves and resident engagement matures. So I do hope the Council approves this strategy. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Robbins.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's brilliant that we're now undertaking these stock condition surveys of every home. I believe it's going to take 5 years, but at the end of that 5 years, we'll have a detail of every single home that we own, or the detail of the condition, which makes it better for us to plan. What I'm particularly pleased about reading through this report is where for the initial stock condition surveys are going to be undertaken by consultants, but over time we'll be setting up an in-house team to manage this process in the future, which is fantastic. So well done all.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Very important point. Councillor Mootin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Williams, for bringing that report to us today. I want to echo that point that the safety of people in council property is absolutely absolute top priority and paramount. And also recognise there has been a backlog of repairs over a considerable period of time. At the beginning of this meeting, Councillor Macleay suggested that you couldn't possibly blame the Greens for this because it's been going on since 2011, almost implying that the 3 years that they had the power to do something about it, it's nothing to do with them. You know, it's a bigger thing. And I do struggle with that perspective because they could have got a grip of it within that period. Nonetheless, I think we do need to recognise there is a backlog. And I just want to perhaps ask you, Councillor Williams, recognising the importance of this, particularly it was referenced previously about Theobald House and fire doors, etc. Yeah, getting the fire doors right, getting a water safety right. How are we absolutely tackling what is clearly possibly a decade and a half backlog if it goes back to 2010? How are we getting a grip of that and really taking it forward so we get into a really a place of residents in these properties are absolutely confident that they are safe at night? Thank you.
So thank you for that. In our next paper, there is a lot more detail about where we are with reaching our programmes, and absolutely, I'm proud. I'm very, very proud of how fast our teams have been put together and how fast our teams are working. Our backlog has dramatically decreased, although we've got more work because we're doing more work with damp and mould, but we've asked people to come and tell us and report for that. So we're aware of that. But the old backlog, it was something like 9,000, has gone down to 2,500 or so. So this was an amazing piece of work. And there's more detail in the next paper, and I will address some more of those issues in the next paper. Our fire safety, we have been so busy and working so hard with upholding fire safety and responding to the new regulations. We've got new fire doors in places, we're replacing spindles, we're doing all sorts of work. There's a lot to be done, but we are working really hard to get everything done, and we are, looking towards making sure our residents are as safe as they can be. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Councillor Mootin and Councillor Williams, for the response. Any further comments or questions from colleagues on this report? No, in which case are colleagues happy to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Our next report is another report, I believe, for Councillor Williams, and that is Housing Safety and Quality, Our Improvement Journey. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. This report asks Cabinet to note the progress made since the regulator of social housing C3 regulatory judgment and to endorse the Housing Safety and Quality Improvement Programme 26-27 as the next phase of our improvement journey towards becoming a great landlord, where we want to be. This report has a lot of numbers in it, which you're more than happy to look at, but we all recognise that these numbers relate to homes. People live in those homes, they're not just numbers, and they're the people that have to, really think about this. So it's not just about the numbers, it's about the people and leaseholders, and we all deserve to live in a safe and good quality home. The report highlights clear and sustained progress, which I'm very proud of, across the key areas of safety and quality consumer standard compliance, where the regulator identified serious concerns. And as I said, these were historical, but we've done our absolute best and we've took the mantle and we're dealing with it. And this includes electrical safety, smoke detection, water safety, fire remediation, alongside strengthened governance, assurance and leadership oversight. We've gripped these findings, and under our leadership, we've turned these figures around through delivery and by understanding how we got here so that we ensure that residents live in safe and well-maintained homes. And at this point, I might, if I may, address some of the points raised by Councillor Macleay, if that's okay, Chair. And thank you, Martin, for helping out with this. I did go through a few emails, actually, when she raised those points about Theobald House. And I know there was a fire in 2024, and I really appreciate that residents are feeling a bit nervy about fire safety in there. And I absolutely appreciate and condone and admire the Councillor McClay's concern on behalf of her residents, as she should. Quite right, a councillor should do that. However, I do want to say that, there are, one of the two high-risk actions that she asked about has been completed in April, okay, and there's one remaining, the front door replacement on a home that has become void, and the door is manufactured and is now available to fit, so I'm very pleased to report to her that this has been actioned. The Fire Risk Assessment FRA programme is now operating on a business as the usual basis for new FRAs. All new April FRAs have been completed, works arising issued to contractors for remediation. Our overall expected date of compliance for existing FRAs is June 2026. Next month, I'm happy to report. With completion of the remaining outstanding low-risk FRAs arising from those FRAs as well. Now, the definitions of high and low, and I've asked that question, it's actually a fair question. What do we mean by that? It could be just a sign, or it could be something more serious. So it is, common examples of high risk are fire doors that require upgrading, and as we said, fire doors in Theobald are being upgraded, and fire signs and notices. So we do think that is a fair risk, because you need those notices for people living in those homes. It's absolutely essential. So we do think they are a high risk, actually. And examples of medium risk may include outside contractor arrangements not being monitored enough, perhaps, or lack of suitable protection to means of escape, so self-close requiring adjustments, so it could be very small adjustments. And examples of low risk action might just include policies, direction notices, and some fire action notices. So there is a range of, and every one of them, even if it is a notice on a door, is an action. So it could be, 10 of these in one area, for example, but they're all actions, they're actions that we take action on. So I do hope that this helps with the residents, who are the important people here, and particularly in Theobald House, as it's been mentioned today, do feel assured, and I understand that they do receive regular newsletters, and officers do attend their resident engagement meetings and are always happy to answer any questions and queries that they have. So I do hope that helps with some of those questions that were raised today, and I'll quickly get back to the report. So I can report to you compliance performance has improved significantly since that regulatory judgment, with 96.8% of homes now holding a 5-year electrical certificate, 85.7% of communal areas electrically compliant, 99.8% of homes have a working smoke alarm, and 96.7% covered by valid water risk assessment. The council is 100% compliant with fire risks assessments across our council housing blocks, and fire safety remediation actions have reduced substantially, with live FRA actions down to 1,466 across the city, and only 2 high-risk actions remaining. So this report does make it clear, though, where challenges remain, and there are challenges due to the work of officers in promoting the introduction of AWAB's law, which is what we wanted to do. We are really inundated with requests to help with damp and mould, and we do have a great team. We're actually now making that team much bigger, so that we want to get through that work quicker for folks. Nobody should live in those conditions, and under our watch, they won't be. We're going to continue working very hard. So the report sets out how the Housing Safety and Quality Improvement Programme will embed lasting, resident-focused improvement, building on the root cause analysis that we discussed in a previous year's report. Because not only are we responding, we actually did an investigation on how did we get here? What is the root cause analysis? What is it telling us? So that this has informed our future plans. And the key themes of the plan are strengthening the resident's voice, improving prioritisation and focus so resources are directed to the highest risks and greatest resident impact, building stronger leadership and a learning culture, which I think we've been very successful at doing, and we have some fantastic leadership, very grateful for that. Investing in workforce capacity and capability. We can't promise and we cannot deliver if we do not have the capability to do so. So investing in that workforce is absolutely essential. Improving data quality, we found when we first came to this administration that there were a few problems with data analysis and actually data retention, and this is being addressed, and I know Jacob's, Councillor Allen is involved in that. And embedding clear responsibility for compliance across the housing service. Every single person is responsible. It's not just one person. We need to all work together to get to where we need to be. So we do show a measurable progress in the report, and as I say, I'm very proud of where we are, but I know we've still got to work hard to get to where we need to be, and we continue to do that. And I do want to particularly thank all of the teams who have worked incredibly hard. Teams are coming out with me on a Saturday evening to speak to residents, to make sure residents are assured about what we're doing, listening to their complaints and feedback, and sometimes we've got some really, really good feedback as well. And I want to thank them for doing that, because they are all going above and beyond, and we couldn't do this without them. So I really do want to thank everybody involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Williams. And it's really important to see this report and the measurable progress that's been made against so many of the metrics. And I must say, I completely concur with what you say about there is still so much more to do. But I must say that what the feedback I receive anecdotally from residents, particularly in the last year, certainly accords with what I'm seeing in this report, which is feedback that the culture in the housing team has shifted, that residents are finding the services more responsive, and that people are seeing improvements in terms of our regulatory standards. So this is really positive to see. Councillor Meaton, did you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Williams. Thank you for clarifying the points I raised in a previous paper around Theobald House, and I very much understand and value that. And how you describe that there is really helpful, in that it tells us something of the story of this administration. What we're doing is seriously tackling the backlog, sorting out the problems, responding to residents. I'm more councillor for the Clarendon estate, and which is a large number of high-rise and low-rise social homes in my ward. And I concur with Councillor Sankey's reflection that residents are noticing the difference. It's not that they live in a utopia, far from it. There is work to be done. But on reflection, given the tenants living in council properties, I would suggest it's better to live under a Labour administration than it is the previous Green administration, because we are getting there, sorting out the backlog, stepping through the problems and solving it, and hearing that nearly 100% and soon to be 100% on fire risk assessments is a huge achievement from what we were handed when this administration 3 years ago was given from the previous administration. It wasn't in a good place 3 years ago under the Greens. We have clearly, with your leadership, Councillor Williams, this Labour administration has seen turning this to a point that actually some of the stats are starting to really stack up. And like I say, council tenants are not living in a perfect sitting, but they are noticing the improvements and our commitment to make it better and sort out things and respond to problems as they're identified. So I want to thank you.
Further comments or questions on the report? Councillor Daniel.
Just as an example of the one council approach that I really feel with a majority control you can achieve, and working as a cabinet, I just wanted to tell a quick anecdote about attending the skills conference with Councillor Sankey and the award ceremony for people who have been trained or retrained and employment. And one of the nominees was an electrician who works for your department, who has been trained up through that, and hearing how not only was his training high quality, but how much he enjoys working for residents of our and tenants of our city, and his commitment and values, and how rewarding he found his work, and that couldn't have happened without that investment in that team. So thanks very much for also helping achieve some of my aims there.
Thank you, Councillor Daniel. Comments, further questions? Councillor Robbins.
Well, just a quick comment, and picking up a bit on what Councillor Newton said about the deputation we heard earlier from the Greens. I noticed that they were very selective in saying you can't blame the Greens because we were only in charge for 3 years out of the last 11, completely forgetting to mention they was in charge for 4 years before that as well. So you could say they were in charge for 7 of the last 15 years, which is just about half. And the point I think you're making, Trevor, is that when you come into administration, you don't get a clean slate. People don't say to you, right, everything that's happened before is wiped clean, now you do it. You are picking up from the previous administration, and you're picking up all the bad points that there were. So I think it's a little disingenuous to sort of select a period of time and say, well, you can't blame us, we were only in charge for 3 out of that 11 years. So I think you're dead right in what you're saying.
Thank you all. Further comments or questions on the report? And if not, our colleagues happy to agree the recommendations? Agreed. Agreed. Thank you all. Our final report today is a report that I'm going to ask Councillor Alexander to introduce, and that's an update on our housing management of the Brickfields development.
So, as you're all aware, Brickfields is a supported living development that has been built to provide much needed care, support and accommodation for people with physical disabilities and or acquired brain injuries. The development comprises of 27 one-bedroom flats and 1 two-bedroom flat. It's fully wheelchair accessible throughout, with shared communal spaces on each floor, a laundry, a guest room and an office and a flat for staff. A specialist care and support provider will provide care and support 24 hours a day. And I must apologise for the urgent nature of this report, but in the circumstances, the chair of today's meeting, Councillor Bella Sankey, was consulted, and it was agreed that this item should be considered at today's meeting as a matter of urgency. This is because the building was completed in April, and procurement of the care and support service is in its final stages, with people due to move in September. Any delay to the landlord and management arrangements will result in further delay to the start date, which in turn will delay people moving in, and this of course will be negatively impacted by those due to move in, especially for those who we are going to be able to move back to our city. And it will, and of course, a delay will incur additional costs and unachieved savings. So a report came to Cabinet in January, and Cabinet delegated authority to the Corporate Director of Homes and Adult Social Care, in consultation with the Director of Property and Finance and myself as Cabinet member that covers adult social care, to award a lease to a registered provider subject to our development costs being met and that we generate the best capital receipt for the property. The option of a registered provider was the preference, rather than the council providing the landlord function ourselves, because financial modelling showed that this is the most financially viable solution to meeting care needs in our city. In addition to the capital receipt, we will be able to reclaim 100% of the housing benefit subsidies that most tenants will be eligible to receive, which of course is not the case if the council or a non-registered provider is the landlord. Homes England, who provided a grant of £2.3 million, have confirmed that we can lease to a registered provider as long as the lease is for a minimum of 125 years and the provider meets the conditions of the grant. We did some soft market testing at the end of 2025, which indicated interest from the registered provider market. From February 2026, 15 providers were approached, but following detailed negotiations, 14 of the providers decided that they would not make offers for this opportunity. We did, however, receive an offer from Southdown, and as many of you will know, Southdown is a long-established charity and not-for-profit provider of specialist housing, care and support services who operate across Brighton and Hove and across Sussex. Their mission is to enable people to live well, independently and with dignity within their communities, particularly people who face disadvantage, vulnerability or complex needs. And this mission very much reflects the aims of Brickfields. Southdown have made an offer that generates the best capital receipt for the property, and this has been confirmed by a Red Book valuation. The offer does not, however, fully cover the development costs, and as that was a condition of the delegated authority to award a lease back at our Cabinet meeting in January, a further Cabinet approval is required, and that's why this has come back here today. The detailed financial implications of this offer are set out in a Part 2 report. The alternative options of the council acting as landlord or the building used for a different purpose have been considered, but a different purpose for this purpose-built accommodation would be a really missed opportunity for our residents, some of whom currently have to have their needs met outside of our city, and fulfilling this need fulfills a key action in our adult social care improvement plan. Also, as we set out in the January Cabinet report, if the council was to be the landlord, then we would be responsible for all the landlord functions, including repairs, planned and major works, and we would need to meet all the regulatory requirements as well as all of the development costs. The recommendation is therefore that Cabinet agree to enter a 125-year lease with Southdown for the best consideration reasonably obtainable in accordance with this report and the Part 2 report, and that Cabinet delegates authority to the Corporate Director for Homes and Adult Social Care in consultation with myself, who of course covers adult social care, to grant a 125-year lease to Southdown and to enter into any auxiliary documentation for the Brickfields building. And please feel free to ask me any questions, and I also have the officer Anne here to help with any tricky ones. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Alexander. I just firstly wanted to say I think this is a really positive success story, the development of this housing. The development is in my ward, and I was there just a few weeks ago for one of my ward surgeries, and the building is looking absolutely fantastic. It's already won design awards, I know, and honestly the job that has been done is incredible. It's looking excellent. And I think this provision is going to be so important, as is detailed in the report, in terms of the need that we know exists, which is why I certainly don't favour the alternative option of using the building for other means. I think this needs to go to people with disabilities and acquired brain injuries, as has always been the plan. I think probably it would make sense for us to move into Part 2 to discuss some of the detail, if colleagues are happy with that. I don't know. Yep. In which case, that's what I need to say. I now propose that we resolve to exclude the press and public under Section 100A, Section 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, and move to confidential session. Thank you. And welcome back to open session. I'm just going to ask our corporate director Jeanette to come in on the strategic benefit of this development.
Thank you, Councillor Sankey. So it is worth noting that in terms of the decision here, we are intending to borrow on an asset that will have effectively been sold. But it's also, we are doing that with the understanding that it will deliver savings in terms of our general fund over the years, and most importantly, bring people back to the city in terms of receiving their care. And this will also contribute to our adult social care improvement journey, which noted that we had more people out of the city than our comparator authorities.
Thank you, Jeanette, and I think that's a really important point about residency and outcomes for our residents. So it's fantastic that this is making a contribution to our improvement journey. I understand that we have, many potential residents that could move in to this facility if we're able to get things up and running in September. And I appreciate all the work that has been done to get us to this point where we do have a viable potential registered provider that can offer the very specialised services that I think are needed. Good to have the conversation about how we ensure that the transition to getting this facility up and running is one that sort of works with and leans into the local community on the Ingram estate, so that people can take up their tenancies there in a really positive way, and we can bring the community together as we're doing that. So if there are no further comments or questions from colleagues, do colleagues accept the recommendations in this report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Fantastic. Thanks very much, everybody. I just have one more thing to note, which is, does Cabinet agree to the Part 2 minutes of the previous meeting as an accurate record?
Agreed.
Thank you. And does Cabinet agree the items listed in Part 2 should remain exempt for disclosure to the press and public?
Agreed.
Thank you, colleagues. I therefore bring this afternoon's meeting to a close and thank everybody for their contributions.
Thank you, Chair.